Go.
My presentation is on memories influencing decisions. In order to properly understand this topic, you need to understand that decisions create individual realities, and individual realities create society as a whole, so it's very important that we understand the decision-making process and the factors that influence it. Memories greatly affect the decision-making process, as each decision creates a memory, and therefore that memory creates the next decision that you make. There are so many things that go into our memories, and traumatic memories are specifically very prevalent in the decision-making process and the memory encoding process. So this led me to create my research question, which is, to what extent does the perception surrounding memories influence the decision-making process for individuals who have experienced trauma and high stress? So to formulate my lines of reasoning, I used the stimulus material, specifically Of Memory and Democracy by Colin Powell and Maury Oral Narratives by Judith Binney. Of Memory and Democracy was super helpful in creating line of reasoning feeling and perceptions in our memories, because the Soviet general who was getting shown all of the memorials and things like that had a perspective shift because he was seeing the opposing side, and he felt very emotional. At one point he even went to reach out to the wall with all the memorials of the soldiers. Therefore, the perspective that you use influences the emotions that you have relating to a specific memory, therefore influencing your decision-making process. The Maury Oral Narratives were helpful in developing a line of reasoning that culture greatly influences your decision-making process, because as Judith Binney states, when one girl was doing a homework assignment, she wasn't able to because her family history was suppressed because of shame. So this kind of created her decision by not being able to fully complete the homework assignment. So therefore, my thesis that I formulated was that the things influencing our memories influence our decisions to a great extent due to feelings, memory type, and cultures. So diving right into that, Robert Drost, who is a clinical psychology professor at Michigan State University, found that an individual's knowledge of the risk as well as the fear associated with the actual event itself will be considered before taking action. This ultimately proves that our feelings can directly influence our decisions that we make. This was found in a research study done during a tornado experiment. So it's like how people are making decisions in natural disasters, which is considered a traumatic event. This can also be seen in trauma cycles. So a study done at Harvard University with sexual assault victims found that they are more likely to become perpetrators due to the familiarity with the feeling of being helpless and then preying on more helpless people. So this graph here shows these are implicit emotions. So implicit emotions are unconscious emotions. And they found that if you unconsciously have a lot of anger or a lot of happiness, then you are more likely to make risk-taking decisions, or if you unconsciously have a lot of fear, you're less likely to make risk-taking decisions. And if you are neutral in your unconscious emotions, then you have a very just kind of neutral ability to make risk-taking decisions. This shows that trauma especially can influence your risk-taking choices, because trauma leads to unconscious emotions. So this graph here shows the cultural influence on children, and it shows that Chinese children had more prevalent encoding of social focused events, while Canadian children had more individual focused events. And this just shows that your memories are directly impacted by your culture. So these people were directly impacted the way that they were encoding their memories by their culture, whether it's Chinese or Canadian. And this specifically relates to America, because there's a lot of discrimination in minority cultures in America. A professor found that Black men described numerous occasions where they felt others perceived them as a threat. This is considered a microaggression, and based on these microaggressions, the men either decided to confirm the microaggression and act more threatening, or oppose the microaggression and act as meek as possible. So this shows that microaggressions based solely on culture influence your decisions and how you present yourself. This is also prevalent in in-groups and out-groups, as Dr. Link, who's a clinical psychologist, found that those who were looking at shoplifting incidents were less likely to report the shoplifting if they were in their in-group. So if you're a white man, if you see a white man shoplifting, you're less likely to report it than if you see a Black man shoplifting. So this directly relates to culture and our decision-making process. Memory type is also super important when understanding the decision-making process. The two main memories that you have are episodic memories, which are long-term memories that are personal. These are often traumatic memories, and they can lead to a lot of biases when you're recalling on them. While semantic memories are based on knowledge, and they're very kind of short-term memory, easily forgotten, and you rely on them in new situations that you're not used to. So in your recall process, when recalling memories, there can be interference both at the immediate level. So if there's a lot of outside stimulus during memories, you can immediately, that memory can be altered and not be perceived in the actual way that it happened. This can also happen at later levels. This is a lot often seen with trauma, is you don't remember it later on. However, Crystal Reek from the Fox School of Business at Temple University in Pennsylvania found that the executive processes mobilized in response to mnemonic interference exert similar consequences on both negative and neutral memories. So pretty much this means that she disagrees that trauma isn't more likely to be forgotten than any other type of memory. So while this does kind of oppose my own claim, this does still kind of relate to my claim because any memory can be forgotten, and that means any memory can influence your decision-making process. So going back to my claim, the types of memories one has and the feelings and cultures that influence them affect the decision-making process to a great extent. Kind of a resolution that I found to this is I think that this should be considered in therapy techniques for individuals who have experienced a traumatic event so that they are able to make sound decisions going forward in their life. Some implications I found in this is you need to have guidelines in place for this, and there needs to be a lot of trainings for psychologists, and a lot of research needs to go into this in order for it to be sufficiently effective. Some limitations are it might interfere with previous techniques and guidelines. It can cost a lot of money to get the research opportunities for this and the trainings and the guidelines for the psychologists, and it can be an ethical issue as well, as it could bring up, just when you're bringing up trauma, there's always ethical things that go into it. But overall, I do believe that decisions are affected to a very great extent by our memories and the things that influence them. These are my resources. Thanks.
How did you handle the differing perspectives in order to reach your conclusion?
Yeah, so I looked at sources from a lot of different perspectives because I had three really distinct lines of reasoning that kind of weren't super related. So I was able to use all of those to kind of tie together to create that they all influence memory. So I used each of them as kind of an aspect of the memory, and then I brought them all together to say that influences in memories just influence the decision-making process.
And what additional questions emerged from your research, and why are these questions important?
Yeah, I had a lot of questions emerge from my research, mainly related to what can we do with this information, because I was very confident that all of those memories influence the decision-making process, but I wasn't super confident, okay, how can I use this information to better the world? Because our decisions are super important because they do create society, as I kind of stated in the beginning. So yeah, my main question is just how can we use this information? And while I did kind of answer it with the therapy techniques, I would like to dive deeper into other ways.
Great, thanks.